All right, hey guys, first job in the morning, 8 o'clock. Actually, I spent good 15 minutes making coffee. But first job of the day finally came in. This customer's complaint, of course, it's been pretty hot this last few weeks, up in the mid 30s, you know. But this customer's complaint is check and report on AC system not blowing cold. Customer states revving the engine gives freezing air, but on idle it's just cool air. So I got the gauges set up, right? A couple of things I want to check is okay, so on these older Civics, this is an 8th gen Civic. This thing has almost 276,000 kilometers. I think that's roughly something right here. So with these older Civics, there's no PIDs on live data to see the temperature probe on the evaporator, right? It's supposed to be in the kilo ohms if you look at shop manual. So you can actually unplug it right here and then check the little probe, the 2-pin connector, and check the resistance of that probe. If it's out of spec, sometimes it'll just kick on the compressor and then quickly kick off because it thinks it's freezing, or the evaporator is freezing. So sometimes you get just cool air when you rev it up, and then once it goes back to idle, it kicks on and kicks off too quickly for it to change the pressure on your high side and low side. The only way to check that probe is with the multimeter. There's no live data. And on the new Hondas, there is a PID for that probe, but it always says minus 40 degrees. So don't let that thing fool you, because that's not actually a functioning PID when it says minus 40 for the temperature probe on the evap core. So don't be fooled by the new Hondas on the live data. So yeah, it kind of threw the guys on a loop, because it was just kicking on the compressor and kicking it off. But what it was the compressor send metal into the condenser, and it was plugging it up, and it was creating really high pressure for the pressure sensor underneath the hood to kick off the compressor. So the only things that are supposed to cut off the compressor or disengage the compressor is the temperature probe in the evaporator core, because when it reaches to a certain temperature, to prevent freezing, it kicks off the compressor. The other thing is there's also a thermal protector on the compressor to kick it off in case of over temperature, and then the pressure sensor on the high side line to kick off the compressor, which if you have too high of a pressure, it will kick off the compressor. And if you have too low of a compressor or too low of a pressure, it won't even kick on the compressor. So those are the things that will cycle on and off the compressor. So those are the things that you need to know when you're trying to diagnosing AC concerns. So good way to check. If you have it on outside air coming in and you leave the recirc off, so you got outside air coming in, the compressor should stay on all the time, because the warm air is warming up that evaporator core, so that temperature probe won't shut off the compressor. So sometimes, like, I got people in the comments are saying, hey, my compressor won't shut off. Like, that is just normal. Sometimes if you don't have it on recirc, the compressor will stay on all the time, because the temperature probe is not kicking off that compressor, because you got warm air from the outside coming in through that evaporator core, and the temperature probe hasn't reached that temperature to shut off the compressor. So right now the compressor is running on all the time. I don't know if you can hear it. I can hear it right now where the condenser fan is running. But once you put it on recirc, it'll quickly just kick off and kick on. I can see. Yeah, I'm just looking at the the pressures right now. So I'm on recirc, so it just should kick on and kick off. But if you turn off recirculate, watching the gauges out there. So yeah, so right now it should have warm air coming out from the outside, so it's about 28 in the shop. So once it reaches a certain temperature, that temperature probe should shut off that AC compressor, which is what it's doing right now. So let's turn the fan on max. Right? So all that warm air from outside is going through the evaporator core, and that compressor should just stay running all the time. So I don't know if you can hear it, but the compressor's on all the time right now. I actually had the other day, had a CRV. One of the other guys, he was looking at, he was saying like the pressure was going up to 500 psi on the high side, and he goes to ask me, like, so is that like a stuck open or expansion valve or whatever? I'm like, I asked him, like, so when you had it running, was your condenser fan running? He's like, no, it wasn't running. I'm like, well, that's probably your problem right there, because your fan is supposed to cool that condenser to lower that pressure. So yeah, so right now it's just constantly running the pressure difference right now. I'm getting cool air, so that's good. It is, yeah, it's cold, so let's go out underneath the hood. Mine is cold. So everything electrically is functioning, and also pressures are pretty good right now. I'm not too worried about that fluctuation. Sometimes people call compressors because it fluctuates, but that's usually normal. That's just like the pulses of the pistons in the compressor. But it should kind of stop shaking when you bring up the RPM. That's just when it does it in idle. So I'm not too worried about that. You got the difference in 150 psi to 40, so that's good. Some people say like it has to be 250, but it doesn't really have to be around 250 psi to be, get cold air, right? We had 500 psi, and then this side had, 70 psi because of the fan wasn't kicking on, and you just get warm air out of the vents. Yeah. Anyways, I'm getting cold air. The only thing I'm going to check is make sure it has the correct amount of refrigerant in it. So I've been watching the pressure. It's returning slowly, so I'm not worried about an expansion valve, because usually it equalizes. If you have like a stuck open, it'll just go equalizes pretty quickly. Right now it's just really slow. I mean, we've been doing a lot of AC since the weather got pretty warm. You should see the pile of leaking condensers we have in the in the main entrance. I'll go and show you guys how much condensers we replace on. Well, not just on the line of Hondas. It's just when summertime comes along, recover. We'll see how much we have. So once it recovers, I'll let you know. Actually, we're just live right now. So if it's low, then we're just going to probably look for, see if we can find a leak. We'll just put the correct amount in, and then, yeah, see where we're at. Kind of already tells me, because pressure's already dropping, and I think this thing takes about 450, I think, just the top of my head. So we'll see how much actually comes out of this. Okay, so just looking around while this thing's recovering, it looks like it has a newer compressor in there. Someone's replaced that compressor, right? It's got some new parts. It got a new master cylinder too. Looks like an aftermarket one. See, new master cylinder. Condensers looks like still the original. Still looks like the original because it has that black coating on it. Oh yeah, let's see what we got. Oh yeah, by the way, I checked the shot magnet. Oh, okay, so it's about 100 grams low. 100, yeah, wow, less than 100 grams. Oh, still going up. So we just recovered just under 400 grams, which is perfectly fine. So I'm just injecting oil and dye. and then I'm going to recharge it with the correct amount. Stop the exit. It takes 450. I was guessed it right. But if you do so much AC already, like the 10th gen takes 420, and then the CRV, like the 07 to whatever, can't remember, it takes 490 grams. When you do so many, you kind of just remember how much everything takes. But it's good to double check, you know, double check how much it actually takes, so you don't put in the wrong amount. So we're gonna recharge it. Make sure I'm gonna get my temperature camera and just stick it in the vents and make sure it's nice and cold. Because the only thing the customer is complaining about is like, oh, it's freezing when you revs the engine up, and then it's cool air when it's at idle. So I think it's just, I don't know. Gotta get more information from him. Maybe because he's think there's something wrong because they just replaced the compressor on it. Yeah, I don't know where he got it replaced it from, but yeah. Anyways, all right. So 450. We're gonna go and equalize the pressure. So we're gonna have to disconnect the high side. High side is disconnected. Now the machine's I gotta start the car and let the low side draw the rest of it in. Put AC on max. It's just gonna draw all the stuff from the high side over to the low side. And that's done. Disconnect low side. Oh, by the way, it only had the one cap. It was missing the low side. So I'm just gonna run it, and then I'm gonna check the vent temperatures with the gun, and we'll see what temperature it is giving on idle, and then we'll bring up the RPMs up and then see what it gives. What do you call it? When the idle, or just off idle, you know what I mean? He just might be just kind of, I don't know, skeptical, especially if it's on a hotter day. Probably spend money on an AC compressor, and he's still complaining that the vent temperatures at idle isn't freezing until he revs it up to, you know, off idle, I guess. So we'll prove that by the the temperature gun. Okay, so I got the temperature thermal imaging camera. I got 3 degrees right now from the vents. It's going to 2. So pretty close to freezing, because, you know, 0 degrees Celsius is freezing, right? So it's pretty low. Let's check over here. Yep. So check over here. Yeah, not as cold as the outer or the inner side, because it's further away from the evaporator core. But when it reaches freezing, that temperature probe on the evap core is supposed to shut off the compressor to prevent the freezing of the evap core. So I'm happy with that temperature. 2 degrees Celsius. Yeah, it's just above almost freezing. Yeah. So I don't even need to rev it up. Maybe he didn't put it on the max AC. What the max AC does is it puts it to recirculate, so it recirculates the cold air inside your cabin, so it doesn't allow the warm air from the outside to come in. So I don't know. And it's also missing an audio unit. I don't know what happened there. So I don't know. I'll call the advisor and see what the actual complaint is, because it's definitely not working or not happening right now. Maybe it's just a bad relay. I don't know. Maybe it intermittently doesn't intermittently the relay is not working. So I don't know. I thought I checked, but somebody's already replaced the AC relay because it's supposed to look like that, or these guys, but it's already got a new relay in there too. So I don't know. I called the advisor and I told him, like, hey, everything I checked, AC's working fine, even at idle. It's, as you can see on the thermal imaging camera, like 2 degrees from the center vents, and you know, about 7, 8 on the outer vents because it's further away from the evap core. So everything's working fine, other than it's just low by like 50 grams, 50-ish grams. So charged it and then put dye in it, and that's all I could do, because I can't duplicate the issue that's customers complain, or he's just complaining about something that's actually just normal. He didn't say it was blowing warm air. It's still blowing cool air. But yeah, for all I know, this customer probably thinks when he turns on the AC, he's supposed to have instant cold air, especially when your car sits outside in the sun and it bakes in there, and you get into the car when it's super hot, and you know, turn on your car, turn on the AC, and it's supposed to have instant cold air coming out of the vents. But no, it's got to remove all that heat first before it starts cooling the rest of your car. I don't know. We got people complaining about the weirdest stuff. So yeah. But all I can do is I can check everything and make sure everything's all working. And yeah, these are the things that, you know, you find and you don't find anything. So no fault found. And then, you know, a customer complained about, oh yeah, the dealership can't fix my AC problem, you know, stuff like that. But I've heard it all from the advisors, because they tell me all the stuff that goes along upstairs, that, you know, they talk to the customers and stuff. Sometimes they complain about the weirdest things. Sometimes they're so set on their issue that there's no logical thing you can say to them to change their mind. I don't know. I'll show you our pile of condensers right by our scrap metal bin. That's how many condensers we've done during just this summer, or actually I think it was just this month and last month alone.